down here in the Great Plains area of the Dakotas, down into Kansas. We do have them breed here at Cheyenne Bottoms. They're a grassland bird mainly. They'll nest on the ground. The winters here mainly right where we're at here in the central United States, and it will also go down into Central America. What's neat about the harrier is that this is the male. You kind of bluish silver. The female is kind of just a dull brown, kind of like real life, really. You know, where the males are much more. No, I'm sorry. That's the opposite way. It's in real life. I'm sorry. But anyway, she's kind of cryptically colored. They're colored like the grass because they nest on the ground. When I talk about the most common hawks, usually everybody will say the red-tailed hawk, and throughout the year that is true. He's the most common one. But during the winter, because these birds from up in Canada are moving down and actually think Kansas is a great place to spend the winter, even with the weather coming up. You know, these will rival in numbers. Christmas bird count, how many? 147 were counted just in this last Christmas bird count. What's neat also about this bird, and it's a little hard to see, but here like in owls, I'm going to show owls, and this one's probably the best. No, actually, this barn owl's better. You see this ring around their eyes? What that actually does is that helps bring in sound. Sound kind of hits at their ears are right back here. So that's actually kind of like a satellite. It brings in sound and it focuses back to the ears. The other things about owls is that their ear canals are offset. Not like evenly like mine, but offset because, you know, people cock their heads, they hear better or something like that. By having those offset, they hear better. The northern harrier has kind of the same thing. It's kind of hard to see here, but you can see his face is flattened out compared to the other hawks. So this bird is not only one that will go skimming over across the grass looking for mice, but it'll come also here, you know, just kind of rustling through there. Now, population-wise, how's it doing at Cheyenne Bottoms? Here with these counts, one thing you got these huge variations from year to year. And that happens with most of the birds that come down far from the north. You know, if the weather up there isn't really terrible or something, we don't get huge numbers coming down. So, and it's also related to what we call the cycles of the prey. There's a lot of mice and rabbits and stuff up way up north. They go into the population cycles where they're up, they go down, and they go up. And we actually see that here and go down. So birds of prey mimic that. So if we get a year up there, up in Canada or something like that, where it's really nasty and there's no prey, then we'll see more birds actually coming farther down and thinking Kansas is a wonderful place to spend the winter. So sometimes when you look at population graphs, you just kind of knock off the top and top and the bottom and kind of look at the overall trend in the middle. And it looks like for Cheyenne Bottoms, the numbers are increasing, at least during the Christmas bird count. And that's true, and I think what's happening because Cheyenne Bottoms is actually becoming more and more important as our wetlands throughout the country. We're still losing wetlands, we're still losing grasslands. So Cheyenne Bottoms is kind of a pearl out in the prairie, and a lot of more birds are coming here than probably historically were. Overall, though, even though they're increasing in population here, overall, the northern harrier is declining because the wetlands and grasslands still are declining. This is another little guy, Mississippi kite. He's probably a little more familiar to people in town. This is a bird that nests in town, very common, up high in the trees. So they're not as common out here at Cheyenne Bottoms trees. They don't have a lot of trees. Most people have probably run into a kite in town, because this has a habit of kind of dive bombing you when you get close to the nest. So we don't have a lot to actually spend their time out here at Cheyenne Bottom because they need more mature trees. Now the Mississippi kite kind of breeds mainly in the southeastern states, but we're kind of on the north and western edge of its boundary, so we have them here. And what's neat is also winters down in Central and South America, but this is a bird that eats mainly insects. A lot of it just on the fly, big insects flying around, but it will go down to the ground. The 50 counted in June is actually an interesting thing that goes on because these birds will nest in town, like I say mostly, but they will actually start gathering birds starting to gather. Not so, since they don't spend a lot of time here, I don't have hardly any information on what's going on with the kites here at Cheyenne Bottoms. So I use kind of that eBird again, and that shows like, looks like they're increasing in number. And here's again, I want to mention this is eBird right now because I want more people to use it. So right now that's just showing the number of observations. In other words, more people are reporting seeing the Mississippi kite out here than there used to be. Because in reality, the Mississippi kite is listed as endangered or threatened in many parts of the states here. But in Kansas, the population is fairly stable. Now we're going to move into what we call the incipiters. And this is a sharp-shinned hawk. And he has the next slide, or the next two slides later on is a Cooper's hawk, which a lot of people get those confused. And the little trick I use is a sharp-shinned hawk with, there we go, sharp-shinned hawk, S&S. He has a short head, in a sense, and a squared-off tail, compared to the Cooper's hawk. And you'll see when I show the Cooper's hawk, there's a difference. This guy, he breeds up in Canada, and he's kind of a year-round resident in the northeast and northwest states, and they'll come down here and spend the winter in Kansas. And it also winters down in South America and parts of Central America. Now, population-wise, this is a really neat one because, it looks like they're increasing, and I think actually in reality, the numbers here at Cheyenne Bottoms are increasing. But here, we're only looking at 6 versus 1. So when you're talking about at the most during the Christmas bird count, 6 birds, you can't really make a really good prediction that the population is increasing at Cheyenne Bottoms. And you're only talking about 6 birds because this species is a species of concern in many states. It breeds, even though it breeds way far north, it's not real research. We don't know a whole lot about its habitat. So it's a bird that needs actually more research to figure out what's going on. Now here's the Cooper's hawk. Remember the sharp-shinned I talked about, a short head and a square tail. Now you have to use your imagination a little bit. But to me, this guy he looks just a little more proud, a little more happy because his neck's up higher. It doesn't look like and he actually has a rounded tail. Cooper's hawk is actually a resident around this area, but it's a resident in wooded areas. So we don't see a lot here at Cheyenne Bottoms, but they do nest here at Cheyenne Bottoms, but in very small numbers. This and the sharp-shinned, they make their living on birds. They sit around in the trees and they wait for birds to fly by and they go out and nab them. And see, I'm not lying. He's eating a bird down there. So they are very fast. They're little birds, but they're very fast. And they make their living going after mainly birds. They'll eat small mammals and snakes and stuff like that, but they make their living eating mainly birds. Overall, looks like, geez, we got some amazing spikes. And again, we're not talking about a number of birds, but the Cooper's hawk is one that is actually, right now, has a stable population. Now I'm going to talk a little about the rare guys. And these are the ones that I've only come up with 1 or 2 sightings at Cheyenne Bottoms. So there's, you can't make any kind of population estimates on what's going on here. This one way over here is the northern goshawk. And he's a resident of Canada in the northwest mountain states. And he'll come down here in the winter, spend the winters here in the Great Plains a little bit. We don't see a lot of them. I think there's been a couple sightings down around Dodge City or something like that, So we don't see those a lot. The only one I know of was spotted here at Cheyenne Bottoms was in 2008. This guy is the Harris's hawk, and he's actually a resident of southwest states and down into Mexico and Central America. But we've had Harris's hawk in last year and the year before that in the wintertime. So a lot of times, some of these birds that are kind of weird and show up here, a lot of times these are juveniles that aren't making a good living down there. They're competing with the adults, so we get some juveniles. So this Harris's hawk is actually, I think it was probably the same one, shelter belts and things like that. So we've created some corridors where these birds have been able to move across the state a little bit more. This is a gyrfalcon. He's nest way up there in the Arctic Circle, and he moves down usually just into Canada to spend the winter. I don't know how Canada could be much better than the Arctic Circle. But anyway, these birds will, on rare occasions, move down south, you know, into Kansas. And this one was, not this particular one, but one was spotted here at Cheyenne Bottoms in 2006. Now, I want to note that, and we'll get to that more when we talk about red-tailed hawk. There's a lot of sightings of gyrfalcons, and Ron, you're kind of on with this, so you've probably seen those too. We also have a red-tailed hawk, a form of a red-tailed hawk that's almost all white. The speckles look a lot like this. So I think sometimes we see other birds other than the gyrfalcon. Here's the barred owl. Now he's a resident of Kansas, eastern United States and in central Kansas, but he's one of the deep woods. And if you drive through Cheyenne Bottoms, right through the middle of it, we don't have too many deep woods here. So we don't see a lot of barred owls here at Cheyenne Bottoms, but we could just go a mile off the preserve